Alright, so welcome back for part two. So part one, we pretty much got everything mapped out the way we want it. Got our first layers in, our basic colors and concepts, and we started to bring it to life. And now in step two, we'll go ahead and polish it up and finish it off. So just to start off here, on the front leaf, I've got the detail brush with moist bristles, and I got some of that blue color and I muted it with a bit of white. And I use that just to define the top ridge of that front section. And I also put some on the top of the hind foot. So you can see some of that muted blue in there. And now I'm just using bright white, reinforcing those highlights again. And you can see I added some little tiny dewdrops on the left back edge of that leaf. So I just loaded the bristles with some bright white and tapped it on and added a bunch of little circles on that back edge, and that added some dewdrops. And then now I used that same muted blue green, and I added a couple little dewdrops on the front edge too. But the difference is those front edge dewdrops, I blended out the edges a bit so that it's soft. They're not super defined, because remember, we want the front edge of that leaf to be a bit blurry and out of focus as we do the stem. And then the frog, the water droplet, and the back edge will be nice and defined, and that'll give us focus on those main shapes and subjects that we want, and then the rest will be out of focus. So it'll really make the main subject pop. Here I'm just adding a couple little touches of white on top of that foot just to define the individual toes and then the top of the foot, and break it up between that shaded region underneath the stomach. And here I'm just tapping in some other little tiny variations of bright white and little spots in the highlights just to make it unique. And now I'm going back with some of that cold gray, a little bit of cobalt blue, and a little bit of white mixture, just to give a nice soft blue-green color. And I'm using that just to define the top portion of that front half of the leaf. So you can see I kind of defined that and then blended it out a bit because we want to keep it blurry. But putting that little off blue in there is just a nice touch. And then I added some white to it, and keeping it all blended and blurry, I'm gonna add some pattern to the leaf here. So just same thing, it's gonna be little triangles, wider at the rim, and they get pointier as they get towards the center of the leaf. And then just blend them out. It's just super subtle, just some different colors and variations in there, but it's all blended out. So it's not super important. You just want to have some different colors and shapes in there just to, so it registers with the eye that there's some different patterns. And there I'm dropping in a second layer of that burnt umber champagne and a pinkish brown color in the bottom portion of the hind leg. So you can see it has that soft blue tint to the front half of the leaf now, and it's just a nice touch. So now I'm just adding our shadow color, just another layer underneath the hind legs there, blending it out in between the toes. And then I'm putting some right behind that little blue line that we added. That'll help define that front half. You can see now just that little touch of shadow behind that blue line divided the leaf now. So now I'm just going to go in and reinforce those brighter areas and reinforce our patterns on the back half of that leaf. And this is just our main green color from earlier. And I brightened it up a little bit with a little bit of yellow and white. But just go ahead and drop that in and blend it out pretty well. And then on top of that, we'll start to add some little veins and subtle details to bring that back half into focus. But I'm just continuing to add tiny little details the way I want it, following the same colors and concepts that we've been working on the whole time. So I'm just revisiting the stem here and adding another layer of color and making sure that it's blended very well. You want the edges to be really soft. We do not want defined edges here because we want it to be out of focus. And then you can see how it really makes that focused, clean, defined frog and water drop pop. So I'm just adding some more of our highlight green yellow to the front rim and just making sure to blend it out well to keep it out of focus. But I just want some of that subtle brightness in the front. So here I'm just adding one final layer to the background, and I'm using our background color, and in the bottom and bottom right I made it a bit darker with more raw umber and black, and then in the upper portions I added a little bit more of the viridian green to the equation, and that way you have a little bit of that dark green up in the upper half, and then in the bottom it's a little darker, so you have a nice blend from that color to almost black, and it just adds a good effect. That's all I'm doing here. That's the 1/2 inch brush with moist bristles. And then you can go over that if you want, if there's a bunch of brush strokes, with a bigger, dry, bristled wash brush, nice and soft, and that'll help smooth out those brush strokes. So you can see here I'm adding more of the bright viridian green up in the corners, and just gives a little green glow. So it suggests, there's some other greenery in the background, but keeps this in focus and gives good contrast to the bright colors. So here I'm just smoothing everything out again, keeping it nice and soft. So here once again I'm just adding another layer of that bright green highlight color here to the top half of the frog, and then I'll add some to the front of the leaf again. I'm pretty much just doing the same things we've talked about over and over until it's exactly the way that I want it. So now I can get that highlight color with a little bit more white, and we can drop in some veins and some texture. And this can be defined, blended out a little bit, but it can be pretty defined here because this portion is going to be in focus. So we just want it, little, it's just a tiny liner brush with moist bristles, and I picked up some of that highlight color with a little bit more white. And we're just adding some lines that radiate inward from, or converge inward from the outer rim towards the water drop, and just subtly dragging and dropping, adding little dots and portions and things like that. We're just adding those little highlighted areas, those couple little veins, and then you can have them going perpendicular to one another, interconnecting. But yeah, add a little bit of variation here using that bright color on top of our other layers, and then you can add some veins and texture to that back leaf half and really bring it to life. These are just some little highlight portions there I'm adding, and I'm blending that out pretty well, but they're in that front, top, back half. You can see where I added those thin strips and dots and veins that interconnect and converge down towards the water drop, and that just is a nice subtle detail. And there I'm adding another layer to it. Here I'm just adding some more of that dark background color right around the edges, just to make sure it's not washed out or thin in those areas. I want it to be clean and contrasting. Don't have any super defined edges. Keep our concept of the blur going, but I'm just tucking in that dark color right next to our picture just to keep good contrast. Touching in a couple random details using our shadow color, cleaning up some edges, and now you can see it's really come to life and looking nice. Here you can add some last little details to the eye, some little highlights. I added some lighter ochre, yellow, brown in there to the iris, colored portion, darkened up the pupil, and then added a couple little white highlights too, just to make that eye look nice and realistic. Now we're doing our last final touches, any last little tweaks, but this one's pretty much done. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate you. I hope it helped. I hope you have fun when you do it. And if you have any questions or you run into any trouble, just leave a comment below and I'll try to answer all of them. So thanks again. Have a good one, and I will see you on the next video.